Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to session on thought. Thought. I like to use the word just thought rather than thinking or even thoughts with an S there, because I don't know, I think the most powerful idea of thinking is when it is a thought, you know. You'll get what I mean by that as we go along. So personally, I found that, pondering on the topic of thought, out of all the other topics that I speak about, is the one that can really suck you into getting into a spiral dive of thinking. I don't know if anyone has experienced that. I mean, you guys are going to be having homework today, and I'm going to be inviting you to be going and pondering on some of the things that we're going to be speaking about today, which will require you to do thinking. So you may find that it's more difficult this month. I personally have. Love to see how you guys go. I mean, out of all the months, you really got to catch yourself to not be thinking, the thinking that just continues to go and go, and you feel like you're falling asleep. You're like, I'm not physically falling asleep, but it feels like the part of me that's awake is falling asleep. I'm talking about my being, right? I'm not just talking about the human part. Love to see how you guys go with it. I mean, when I watched OMG, and I watched all the 3 videos of thought, it really just clarifies, thought and the thought that's really creating, and it's a clarification. What I'd like to do is I want to extend from OMG, and yes, furthermore, a little bit more clarification of the different type of thought we have and its effectiveness and what it's usually used for. And because at the end of the day, our thought is a tool, just like our body is a vessel. Our body is our vessel for us to have an experience in. Just like you go into a cinema room, the cinema room is your vessel to experience, all right, or space to experience the movie. And that's what you're there to do, to experience all the emotions and the sounds and the feelings, everything that comes with watching that movie. So therefore, so is our body. Our body is like, it is like our cinema. It is our vessel that we experience, what we know ourselves as the individual to be. So it is a tool for us, right? Or it is a vessel for us. And for that vessel, every vessel has got tools. If you're in a ship, it's got different tools. It might have a motor, or it might have sails. It's got tools to help it navigate around the space or the ocean. So therefore, so do we have tools. And one of our greatest tools is thought, right? But it's I guess today's session and what we're going to be going into is the misconceptions of what thought is, or the role that thought plays. I like to, my favorite statement for me is, I always like I love this statement, and it comes up for me a lot. Is I love moving energy. It's like I move energy. You know, I want to have a shirt that says I move energy, right? But but that's what we do. That's what we're part of. Who we are is energy, right? Now, you move energy with thought because thought itself is energy. Now, of course, energy has different vibrations and has different, you know, energy can be formless, energy could be formed, right? Now, the energy that's formless and the energy that's formed has different vibrations, okay? So same goes with the different type of thought that we have, right? You know, we're going to be talking about the 3 different levels of thought that we have. One is not better and worse. It's just they play a different role, and they're a different tool for a different part of our experience. Okay, just like your senses as a human being, your smell, right, has a different role versus your hearing. Your taste has a different role versus your touch. They're all senses. There are 5 human senses. You know, your sight has a different role. Okay? These are tools for the human part of you. But as we've always discussed, we're not just a human, we are a human being. If you can, all right? We are a human being, right? The being part, right, has different senses. And that's what we're here to talk about. So my intention here is to make this as simple, as clear as possible, because if any time you can get into twined and before you know it, you're in a knot of thinking, it's this one. It's this one, because this one I think can excite you or excite a part of you as a part where you can go, well, if I'm moving energy, then I have control. I think control really, that whole idea of having control or not having control or gaining control or not losing control really fucks you up. You know, it's that just the moment you think you're going to lose control, the moment you think you're going to gain it, like what I just said to you right there, it really, when I say it fucks you up, it head fucks you. Okay. And I'll just remind you that, you know, we've discussed this previously in OMG, but the part of you that is in control is not looking to gain or be afraid of losing control, because it's in control. The part of you that doesn't have control, right? Which, again, the part of you that doesn't have control, it appears that it has control. So therefore, it always looks to control that appearance, if you know what I mean. It doesn't want to realize it doesn't have control. So it wants to control the appearance. You know, I am in control. Anyway, we're not here to talk about control, but I say this is why, you know, you can really get into a knot in your own head with this. You know, thought is meant to be just flowing. You know, the moment you feel disconnected and heavy, it's because you got it into a knot. And then you're trying to undo the knot. You know, it's the same kind of feeling. You're trying to pull the knot away, and it's a very heavy feeling. Now, the reason you usually get into a knot is because control, right? The idea of control just came into your attention, into your awareness. The idea of it came in. And 2, it's because you're using a thought that is not appropriate for what you're looking to do. So at this point, I'm not going to revisit too much of OMG right now because I just want to stay with where we're at. At this point, one part of OMG that I do want to revisit, and that's probably the only part, is something I say in OMG is, do you think the one thinks? You know, and I ask that to the audience. Do you think the one energy is thinking? And of course, they're like, well, no, it's not thinking per se. It's not sitting there going, should I do this? Should I not? We've spoken about this, how the one, right? A one energy, right? An infinite energy. How does it choose? We've spoken about that. It doesn't go, should I do this? Should I not? Would it work? Would it not? What would be the benefits? What would be the, you know, the pros and cons? Is that, you know, it doesn't do that, right? And it's very difficult to put this into words, but the way I put it into words is, it's just, it is chosen. Okay, you need to revisit that or reconnect to that, because this is very similar to what I'm about to share with you. There's a very strong affiliation. It is chosen, and you've experienced that. Just to revisit really quickly, right? It's the moment where you just realize, oh, I love to do this. Oh, I love this person. And then that's when I ask people, did you really decide to love that person? Did you really decide to love flying? Well, yes, and the ego identity that has hijacked that thought or that claim says, well, yes, I did. I remember the day my father took me to the airport, and then I had an affiliation or a connection with flying, and that's when I always wanted to fly, right? Now, there's going to be a story to support why you feel that, so you can think to yourself that you are in control of the appearance, and that you did think that, and that you did decide that. Do you see what I mean? But my mum tried to make me play pianos. I didn't get this connection with it and become a musician. Do you know what I mean? So what I'm trying to say to you is there's those moments where you've decided, you know, who you want to become, you know, that you love a banana. Oh, I love the taste. Did you decide that? Now, again, the appearance is that you did. Well, because banana is, I remember when I tasted it, it was like and I remember my first time that I remember, I was in Rome in Italy, and my mum gave me a banana, and I fell in love with bananas. And that's the moment I decided that I love bananas. That's bananas to even think that, if I can say that. Because now I know it's in your mind to think, well, I decided that, but it's more, I realized that. This is very, very important to revisit that point to understand what I'm about to share with you. I realized I love my wife. I realized I'm ready to settle down and get married. If I decided that I'm ready to settle down and get married, that ain't it. That's you deciding, because everyone else is, for example, settling down and getting married. You know, you're falling behind. You're getting old. You're getting, you know, you can't have a baby soon. You know what I mean? There's reasons for you to decide that. Okay, so please remember, and you may have to revisit that. I don't remember what month it was that I've been talking about the decisions already made. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We'll revisit that, and maybe as a, hey?
Manifestation.
Manifestation, okay. So it could be manifestation. But what I'm about to share with you is so strongly the same, such a strong affiliation. It's the same that if you never got that, you're going to struggle to get this. Well, you're going to struggle to get a part of this. You'll get some points either way, right? So the decision is already made. And again, a key word I'm going to highlight here for you is you have a realization that you've made that decision. You have a realization that you've made that you're ready to get married. You've had a realization that, oh, I love flying. You have a realization that you love banana. But in the appearance, it's designed for you to think, I decided that I love a banana, or I decided that I love to fly planes. I remember when my father took me to the airport. And I have a story attached to why I decided that. Because my father took me to the airport. He took me underneath the runway. That's why I decided it. Like, you need to really be so alert and present to your story that you have around why you decided that and when you decided that. If you become so present to it, you realize it wasn't a decision you made. It was a realization you had. It's still a decision that was made, but it's not your thinking that you are used to, where you think, should I do this, should I not? What do I want to do? Yes, when you're thinking, you may ask, what do I want to do next? You may have that realization. So I won't go on more about that because I want to get into the thinking. So in many OMG modules, or more in the later modules, I think it's in the bonus 3 modules, I think in imagination or I am, or it was the Hawaii trip when we spoke. What did I speak about? What's the last module? Forget now. I am really manifestation. Hey, purity. Okay, the one before purity. I am. Must have been imagination. Anyway, somewhere in all this work, in all this content, there's a point where I've shared this with you guys so you know, where I said, I would look at the greatest things or the most effortless things, the most blissful things that I was doing in my life, and I was trying to explain to you guys or to others about how I was doing this, or people would more likely, they would ask me the questions of how I would be doing this, right? And my common answer was, I don't know, I just don't think about it. Like, I didn't really have a much more amazing answer than that. It was kind of lame answer. I was like, really? Is that's all you have, Amir? You don't know, you just don't think about it. But it was the truth. It was like, I just don't think about it. It's just happening. It's like, well, how do I pass that on to someone? How do I share that insight? I don't know. There was a point where I thought about it a lot. And I thought about how I needed it. And I thought about how I needed to escape from where I was. There was a lot of thinking. So when did it go to a point where it's like, I don't know, I just don't think about it, right? But that statement, and again, we've spoken about this before, but just really briefly, I guess it's important to share really briefly here about the idea of what I was saying, I don't know, I just don't think about it. Because that experience of, I don't know, I just don't think about it, is the one thought. Now, you're thinking, some of you didn't hear me speak on a previous thing. So we're going to have to go through the different types of thoughts. But one of the thought that you have, right? There's 3 types of thought. One of them is called one thought, right? And I'm glad that I've come here to share this, because in the past, I just go, I don't know, I just don't think about it. And then everyone will go, okay, we just don't think about it and it will just happen. But I'm now at a place where I feel I'm ready to deliver and share what that experience is when you're going, I don't know, I just don't think about it. I just notice it and then it just happens. And then and then it's happening and it's cool, right? This is what I want to share with you. This is what is called as one thought. Now, before we go into one thought, let's just go into the thinking that you may be aware of already. Again, remember, just like your eyes have a different role and your hearing has a different role, your smell and your taste have a different role and your touch have a different role, so do the different thinking that you have. You have, in my experience, you have 3 different types of thought. Okay? You have your logical thinking, which is the lowest frequency. This doesn't mean it's bad or worse. Your logical thinking or the ego that lives in your logical thinking will try to make things bad or worse or higher or lower. It's just a lower frequency because it's not required anymore. Do you know what I mean? When a plane takes off, it requires maybe full power or a higher percentage of power, maybe 75%, maybe 100% power. But when it's landing, it just doesn't need 100% power. In fact, it will damage and you will have problems landing the aircraft, right? It just doesn't need it. So logical thought doesn't need a higher frequency. It requires a lower frequency. They don't try to make it into a higher frequency. That's where you get into a knot. Okay? Now, logical thought is simple, right? You know what logic is, but I need you to understand it a little bit more intelligently. Everything that is logical thought is thought that has been had. It's things that you have heard or potentially things that you have experienced. It's your perception feeds into the thought. So what I'm trying to say to you, and I'll give you my notes on this. All right. So don't worry about taking notes right now. All right. I would always encourage you to take notes the second time you watch this. The thought in logical thought is always like a train. It has an attached another thought. In other words, one thought leads to another thought. The next thought leads to another thought. It continues. It's thought, when I say it's thought that you've had, right? In other words, this probably doesn't make sense. In other words, the thought is of something that is known. I'm going to talk about the known and the unknown. Logic is always, I had a quote, I think I wrote somewhere, imagination, or logic is the thief that steals from your imagination. Okay? Because your imagination, true imagination, right? Or if you like the one thought, we'll get to that in a second, doesn't require logic. But just so we understand here, logic thought fits into the category of the known. So this is, what's the known? What's formed? Facts, right? It's important to use this part of your brain when you're learning something. Do you understand? When you're learning to fly a plane, when you're learning to drive a car, more relatable for you guys. When you're learning to drive a car, there was a lot of thinking involved and it's required. But once you understand how to drive a car, you get to a point where the thinking becomes like an autopilot, right? It happens by itself. It's not required. It becomes like a subconscious thinking. So when you're driving now, you're not thinking about it. You're actually free to probably think about other things. Sometimes, even if you've driven somewhere quite commonly, regularly, you don't even think how to get there. You just know it's coming up. The exit on the freeway is the next exit, and you just don't even think about it. And if you go to yourself and someone actually asked you, how did you get here? Sometimes you have to think. If it was, you might have to go, how did I get here? Oh yeah, I took it. You have to sometimes remember. So that being said, your logical thought is your everyday thinking, and it's required for your experience. It's what you're, it's you communicating between form, and the formless, but it's the connection between all the form. It's the connection between time. It's where your five human senses is interpreting back to your logical thought. And sometimes they say, the left brain. Okay. But what you got to understand, the key point that I want to highlight is it's of the known. So it's something that's happened. It's how you use your logical thought right now is based on the known that was or that is. Whether you've experienced that or you have a reference point of something that happened to someone else and they told you about it. It's all purely on the known. What you need to understand about the known is the finite. Now, the finite can still be powerful, right? And it is. There's lots of powerful finite experiences. But infinity comes from the unknown. Don't let it get into your head and go, well, I just want to use the infinity. Like most of your everyday living and your interpretations and just decisions that don't require any higher level thinking is made with logical thought. There's nothing wrong with it. I talk about this in the Intuitive Warrior when I first started doing Intuitive Warrior, and people would just go, well, obviously I don't want to use my left brain. The logical thought is weak. It's required. It's your human part. Yes, we're not just a human, we're a human being, and there's a being part as well, right? But you can't just be a being. You can't just be a human. They're both coming together as one. The problem is what most people do is they will try to use their logical thought to create or to connect to the unknown. It's designed for the known. Okay. And that's when you'll get people like the law of attraction, and they'll just try to think about it and think about the next car spot. And if they're using logical thought, it doesn't work. It doesn't have power to create. Okay. Because in the creation or manifestation process, it is the unknown. It is the formless that is forming into form. Remember, when I talked about manifestation, anything that has been formed has no more power. It's already been formed. It's now but drop. Even an idea. Okay. I have some notes, and maybe I'll revisit this at the end. Right. I have more points about logical thought just to get you to understand that it's something that you're continuously using. All right. It's not limited. It's limited if you're trying to use it for something it's not designed for. In other words, if you were trying to taste your food with your ears, that would be weird. But most people, do you get what I mean? Like, to give you an outrageous example, like if I was putting a banana in my ear, well, it's not designed to tell me what it tastes like. My tongue is. But then with the thinking, that type of thinking, most people are trying to connect to, and they lose them, connect to what's out besides logic, connect to the unknown, if you like, connect to infinity, create. It can't create. It's logic. It's only there for and to connect between the form and your understanding of the form. But it does have a role. And without it, you wouldn't be experiencing yourself here. So the other type of thinking that you do is your creative thinking. Okay. Now, creative thinking is a little bit more looser. It's like when the parameters of the logic break down a little bit. Okay, but the surroundings, or if I could get like a ice cube, the ice cube from my freezer's just right here. You know, you get ice cubes and they're in an ice cube tray, right? Your creative mind or your creative thinking can decide, oh, I would like to change the color of the ice cube, right? But it still is using the ice cube tray. The ice cube tray is still the template, like, of logical thought. But logical thought only knows that the ice cube's always been clear and it's always only put water in there. But you could actually put cordial in there. You could change the color of the ice cubes. That's what the creative mind does. Okay? Now here's the point. This is a great analogy that just come to me right now, because the creative mind is changing the form. It's changing the form of what was or is. But it still has a connection or affiliation with logic, which is, logic is only your understanding of the known. It's what is or was. Even if you're looking at what could be in logic or in creative, what could be is completely influenced based on what your understanding of what is and what was, which is the known, right? But your creative mind it sees past the boundaries. It still sees the ice cube tray, but now it goes, we can change the color. It changes the form, right? Or adds or modifies the form of what is or was. It's not completely in the unknown. Most people will call this their intuition, right? To me, your intuition is your inner voice. It's the voice of you as the one. It's completely has no influence. In your right brain or your creative thought, right? It's still influencing. There's still a parameter. It's just breaking the rules. Okay, it's still got the ice tray there. Now, okay, I will use that analogy in a sec. My point is the ice tray is still there, but now you're thinking it doesn't have to be just water. I'm going to put cordial in there and really impress my kids with red ice cubes or coloring. You know, that's a good idea. I might do that for Orlando's birthday next time. Get red and blue and green ice cubes. That's the creative thinking. Okay, but remember, I still am using the ice cube tray. The parameters or the space of logic is still there. Okay, I'm just now bending the rules. In the Matrix, it says some rules are there to be bent. Some rules are there to be broken. All right? To break free from it completely, there is obviously what I'm leading to, which is one thought. Now, the one thought it doesn't use the ice cube tray anymore, because the one thought is the logic and the creative thought coming together as one. And that's why I call it the one thought. I don't know what else to call it, right? But this is the moment where it's not limited or influenced logically, right? And nor is it reliant on a feeling. You see, your creative thought is more your imagination. I mean, both logic and creative thought use your thinking, your imagination, and your feeling. Obviously, in your creative thought, when you are having a feeling, from creative thought. It's more of a reaction to the thinking you're doing, which I always say it's a reaction, it's not a feeling, right? But you're imagining things logically too, all right? Everybody think about 50 cents. Oh, you guys don't have 50 cents. Everybody think about, a $1 bill or a $1 coin, right? It's a logical thing, right? Even like, you do a calculation. What's 90 cents minus, if I pay if I pay $1 for something, God, what am I using stupid examples? Something costs $4. Something costs $4. I give them a $5 bill. What do I get in return? Like you still can visualize. Oh, well, I'm getting a dollar bill back. You can still see an image. All right. Same with the right brain, right? Your right brain, you can have a thought, but the thought is different. It's a different vibration. Again, the sensation of that thought is different. Creativity is different. That's why most people use the right brain to, think about philosophy and even religion and, your feelings, right? And this is where people go, well, that's my intuition, right? It's a different vibration of the emotion that you have which is a reaction to the thinking you're doing. This is more of it's a feeling, right? So creativity, people connect with that as a feeling. And again, imagination. So what I'm trying to say to you is that these three come together, right? When it's one thought, it's not reliant on logical thinking. So in other words, it doesn't come from past knowns, nor is it reliant on a feeling. These two thoughts come together as one, and we'll talk about this next session, right? I'm just right now getting you to become clear of what this is. The two thoughts become one, and you have one thought, right? And I like the name one thought because the thought itself comes to you singularly, if that's a word. Yeah, it is a word. I just couldn't say it. It's a singular thought. In other words, the thought is not attached to another thought. So the thought doesn't present itself and then you notice you're thinking about how or what or what. I mean, sure, you may do that a bit later on, but it presents itself as a realization and it doesn't require you to feel it. It completely comes from the unknown and it doesn't require you to feel it like, oh, I feel to do this. In fact, so do you understand that, right? And again, if you think about this one thought, right, it makes sense. The part of you that is one thinks this way. If it uses thoughts, it does it this way. It has no logic, or if you like, it doesn't require it. It doesn't have to come from the known. It's not limited to the unknown, and it's not limited to requiring a feeling to do it. So whenever I realize, I don't know, I just don't think about it, in those moments, the feeling has only presented itself once I notice I'm already doing it. That's why you go, I don't know, I just don't think about it. And I'm sure you've had those experiences in your life where you've just gone, you just did it. There was no you didn't need to dissect it logically, right? You didn't need to have the feeling. I mean, sure, you will have a feeling of knowing and we go, oh, I just knew it, but you just knew it the moment you were doing it. It's like, what do you think I'm doing with you guys right now? I'll tell you what it feels like. Every time again, every time you feel the experience or the presence of one thought, it's that same feeling that you get where you feels like when I speak to people and I share this with people, right? I tell them it will feel familiar like you already knew it. Because the part of them I'm speaking to is the one in me speaking to the one in them, which is the one. They're just ones, cancel each other out, right? They are feeling, it feels familiar. They're not thinking it, it just feels familiar. If they go then think about it and they go, oh, what can I do with this? And I won't go into that right now. You know what happens there. I just want to stay with the feeling. When I'm speaking to you guys, whether it's right now or whether it's in a retreat or whether it's in a WTF, I am speaking from the unknown. Now, you may ask yourself, well, how do you speak from the unknown when you do the WTF when you've done it hundreds of times? Okay, maybe this talk you're doing today for us, you've never done. But the WTF, how do you explain that it's from the unknown? I could easily fall into the idea of speaking from the known, and I'll know that because I'll feel completely disconnected from it. It feels like it's a doing process. All right. But every time I present the WTF, it feels fresh, it feels light to me, even though I've presented it before. So remember this. When it's one thought, it may be strongly connected to what you did yesterday. It may be strongly connected to your current story. It just drops into the middle of your story, but it feels like it's new. And the only way I can explain it to you when I say it feels like it's new, it feels fresh, it feels refreshing, and it feels light. When I present the WTF, that's what it feels like for me. That's what it feels like for the people, right? That the message is for. If the message is not for them, they're never going to feel that anyway. They feel like it's familiar. They feel like it's refreshing. These are the words they use. It's so refreshing what you're saying. It feels so true. It feels light. That's the unknown. So remember, the unknown doesn't mean it's never, when you speak, there is infinite ways of you to speak. When you show up, there's infinite ways of you show up. When it's one thought, right, you've never shown up that way. When it's one thought, you've never spoken that before. Now you may think the WTF is a perfect example. How are you saying you've never spoken that? You've spoken the WTF hundreds of times. In this new moment, it's been presented brand new. It's completely from the unknown. It's completely uninfluenced. It doesn't require logic, nor is it limited to requiring a feeling. Now, in saying that, I should remind you or get you to be aware that the one thought at this point may be rare. You might have had moments of it. But when I say, I don't know, I just didn't think about it, I'm describing to you the one thought. I'd never had broken it down. And even if I tried, or even if, I guess I didn't really try. I was just like, I don't know. I don't know how to do it. I don't logically know how I do. I just don't, there's some things in my life, I don't think about it and I just do it. And it's just happening. And I feel free and light in the happening. It's not from the outcome or the result. It's the happening is the moment. The happening is where the thought is coming from. The happening is purely based on who I'm being when with the experience of the one thought. Okay. Does that make sense? Is that dropping in somewhat? Okay, I'm going to read you my notes now. Okay, maybe I'll go through this and again, I'll share this with you, right? I'll share this with you, my notes for today. But what I would like to do is read it with you to make sure you understand what the note is saying, so you don't go and turn it into a knot in your head. Okay, so that's why I would like to read it with you now, rather than you go read it on your own, because there's some points. Remember, my notes are just point form for me. It's just my realization. Oh, one other thing I'm talking about realization. The one thought is a realization. The most powerful thought you can have is one of realization. It's just you realize that you feel this way. You realize that you love that person. You realize that you decided this. You realize that you're doing this. It's a realization. Okay? Again, it's rare because most of the thinking that is required is logical thinking, right? And creative thinking. But anyone that uses or experiences one thought, anything, if they pursue the one thought, pursue is not the right word, but if they really embody the one thought, whatever they express or form from the one thought is commonly known as genius. What is commonly known as genius? Something that was never created before. Somebody comes up with something in brand new, fresh thing, and they go, wow, that's genius. Or they're a genius. It's new. It's the unknown forming itself. It's the formless forming into form. But the formless is not, well, there's the ice tray and I'm going to change it. That's pretty genius too, but it's not genius. It's just, wow, that's clever. Wow, that's creative. Genius is, I don't need the ice cube tray anymore. And you create, let's call an ice cube maker. When someone created an ice cube maker and everybody realized they don't need to use an ice cube tray anymore, was that not genius? That's genius. I mean, you probably don't remember that moment, either do I. I'm just giving you a reference point. It's brand new. Okay? My biggest affiliation with this is with my talking. That's how I know it. It's the space that I speak from. It's always new. It's new for me. It feels fresh. It feels light. That's how I know this. Everything that I have lived or continue to live in my life, I have drawn from what I speak. I go, well, how I do it on stage? How am I doing this? I observe what I do, and from that I then expand it into other areas of my life. But we won't get into that right now. But you know what I'm trying to say. That's how I know. Because I look at how I do it in the speaking, I know it's all in the unknown. Okay, just stay muted for a second, guys. Let me just read this to you. I'll keep it brief. All right, I just want to read it. Like I said, remember it's point forms. So it's not meant to be a book, but I'm going to give it to you. But I want to read it because I just want to make sure if there's anything in here that I need to further explain, I can. Okay, I've labeled it the 3 types of thought. Okay, just to simplify it for now. The 3 types of thought. So you have logical thought. So logical thought are your thinking thoughts, influenced from what has already formed, already spoken, heard, and potentially already experienced. They are loaded with past reference points and future ideals. So when I say future ideals, the future ideals are, and it's an idea of the future, but they are still riddled with past reference points. They are always influenced by what you know to be, which is shaped by form rather than the formless. What this means is that every thought exists based on your perception and beliefs, which have been formed by what you've experienced or heard before, or maybe seen before, by what you've experienced, or what reference points you have. But they're all known. They're known. You know that to be true. They're all facts, potentially. The thought you're having is connected to a chain of other thoughts you have had previously. That's what I meant with the train. It's just connected, right? And it's still got a purpose, but most people know that thought as being who they are. No, it's just one of your tools. It's not who you are. It's one of your tools, and it is effective for your logical thinking. Logical thought is effective sometimes as an auto response, a reaction for what already is in the known. Using logical thought to ignite your infinite possibilities, in other words, the unknown or the formless, will commonly leave you feeling heavy and disconnected, as logical thought is only effective when connecting to the use of the known. So that's what I meant when people get into knots. All right. Sometimes you go, oh, you're just having a heady experience of this. That's when they're trying to grasp it logically only. You need to open up to a different frequency, to your creative thought. You're either reacting emotionally or responding to these thoughts. Okay. So we talked about emotional reaction to these thoughts, and responding to these thoughts is you have this thought, then you take action of it. They're not necessarily free will, as your responses and your reactions are influenced by your previous perceptions and were formed by your previous experiences, the known. All right? True free will doesn't come from this place. That's not where you're making, although people try to make free will or try to make decisions from this place. However, the logical thought is useful for everyday living, where other version of thought is not necessary. All right? So when other version of thought, being creative thought, or even the one thought, which, the one thought is not always necessary, right? Creative thought might not be necessary. If you just want to fill up the ice cube with water again, it's just not going to require creative thought. So you don't need to tap into that or use that. You just do autoresponder. You're like, last time I filled it up with water, it took about 4 hours to freeze. It's going to be about the same, and you just use that. Okay. I'll talk about this in creativity in the past, where I say the formless energy is infinite. Once you can't plan that, you can't plan the infinite. In other words, the formless forming itself into form. But once it's formed itself into form, you can create systems and procedures to duplicate that experience of that form. Does that make sense? All right. So you'll notice a business or a company, they have an idea. The idea came from the formless, but once the idea, or maybe from creativity, but once the idea is formed, then they might put that through a manufacturer to duplicate that. There's going to be procedures, there's going to be plans, there's going to be systems to continue to duplicate that form. But it's always going to be limited to that form. But that's okay, because that's their business. They're making a Barbie doll and they want to make 1 million of them. It's just do the same thing over and over again. So I'm just giving you ideas of how it is necessary. Logical thought is useful for the everyday living, where other version of thought is not necessary. That's what we're up to. Logical thought can be effective as an autopilot, which are thoughts to support things that you do that require no conscious thought. Example, driving a car, where you're mostly driving the car subconsciously. We spoke about that. Logical thought can also be effective for planning, strategizing. However, all plans and strategies have their limitations to what's already been formed, the limited. Does that make sense? That's what I just spoke to you about. Like, you have a plan, you have a system, whatever, but it's going to be limited to that form. So in other words, they're completely influenced by what's worked or what not worked in the past. So if you do any planning from there, right, it's going to be completely influenced by what's formed or hasn't, what's worked or not worked from the past or the known. Logical thought is an essential thought for everyday activity and is used for when you use it for what it's effectively there to be used for. Okay? What it's effectively there to be used for. Logical thought is more to navigate and experience what's been already formed. So in other words, logical thought is more effective to navigate and experience that which has already been formed. Okay, are we on the same page here? Okay, creative thought. Creative thought is when your true feeling is using, and when I say true feeling, some people will call that intuitive feeling. Some people will just call it, the feeling. It's creative. It's outside of the box feeling. Okay, it's the closest thing that people know as the feeling is the one. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. So creative thought is when your true feeling is using your thought to modify the form of an idea that is or has been. Reference the ice cube. It has been. You're now looking to modify the form of what has been. You understand? The idea that is or has been. All right. What this actually means is that you're using your creative intelligence to form ideas, patterns, ideas or patterns that will help you to express, recreate, and modify the form that is or has been. Can't make it simpler than that. You might have to read that a few times and read it over and over again to grasp it, but it's pretty simple. Although you're using your creativity, which is pretty deeply connected to the formless, what's being formed is being influenced from other ideas or forms that is or has been. So the known. So it's still being influenced by the known. I still had the ice tray. The ice tray was the known. I've just changed the color of the ice cubes to establish a new idea of form, the unknown. So I'll just say it again. What's being formed is being influenced from other ideas or forms that is or has been, in other words, the known, to establish a new idea or form, which is an unknown. Does that make sense? You're still using the unknown, but what is unknown is being presented into or fitting into what is known. I'm glad I didn't start with the notes because this is probably a little bit heady. Just go back to what I've already spoken to about and connect with that. Creative thought is in the moment now stuff. However, its essence, it's not completely from the unknown. It's still being influenced from what was and what is, and even what could be. Still, it's an extremely powerful thought using higher vibration than logical thought. Okay, final one thought. Thoughts that are presented in the moment, from the moment, for the moment. They present themselves through you, but without any influence. This is more rare, and it derives completely from the unknown. Okay? This thought has no boundaries of interpretation. It is not limited to being logical nor creative. That's what I was trying to say before. It's not limited to being creative nor logical. Okay? If anything, it is the logical and the creative thought coming together as one thought, hence the name one thought. You may not understand it, logical thought, and you may not even feel it, creative thought, until it has presented itself by moving you. And then you go, I don't know, I just didn't think about it, but I'm just notice I'm doing this. Don't try to understand and grasp this completely. The idea of this is for me just to present it, for you to go back and rewatch it. You might rewatch it again a year later. It will just keep falling deeper and deeper. When you're ready to use it, or when you're ready to grasp it, you will. You just know it to be true, and the feeling, and you feel free when you operate from this level of thought, not from what it gives you, rather from what it is and where it comes from. This is, again, not from what it gives you, meaning not from the outcome or the results that it could potentially give you, rather from what it is and where it comes from. It's your closest connection it's your closest experience of being the one. Okay? This is when you experience the deepest level of who you are. This is when you experience the deepest level of who you are through thought. In other words, if the one was to think, it would think this way. If the one was to decide, it will decide like I shared with you at the beginning. When you experience one thought, it doesn't accompany itself with other thoughts. It's a singular thought in the emptiness. Emptiness is the awareness. This is really important to understand because next week we're going to be talking about the emptiness and the awareness. Okay? Really important to understand that part whenever you're ready to understand it. The truest form of genius takes place from here, like I spoke to you about before. Why is it genius? Because what comes from the one thought is always new, never being experienced in that form, in that way. It's completely forming from the unknown rather than the known. And even, this is what I spoke to you about before, and even if there may be a strong affiliation with the known, like me delivering the WTF experience, it still feels new, fresh, and light. All right, so what I want you to, homework is observe your thoughts, continue to observe your thoughts, and once you've observed your thoughts, then observe your thoughts again. And just see if you can not label it as what kind of thought it is, but just become aware of what kind of thought it is. Labeling it is just going to get you into logical thinking only. Okay? You can't label it. Just notice your thought. And you might notice you're using you're trying to, create something new and be part of something, I don't know, just create something new and you're using your logical thought, and just notice that experience. Okay? So it's just as much as you can, observe your thoughts, continue to observe your thoughts, and once you've observed your thoughts, then observe your thoughts again. Try not to think about what this whole thing is, because this is what I meant. You can get into a thinking process rather than a pondering process, because you are pondering about your thoughts. And as soon as you do, you start to think about it, and it just brings it, I don't know, you'll see for yourself. I personally have experienced that.